Localized wind systems. In addition to the main and secondary atmospheric circulation, there are many smaller winds that have a significant impact on weather and climate at a local level. These winds are the result of local pressure variations that occur in response to topographic conditions in the immediate vicinity, sometimes in combination with broad-scale circulation conditions.
1. Sea and land breezes. The cycle of sea breeze during the day and land breeze at night is a common local wind system in tropical coastlines and to a lesser extent in the summer in mid-latitude coastal areas. This convectional circulation is caused by the difference in heating of the land and water surfaces during the day. The land warms up quickly during the day, warming the air above it by conduction and radiation. This heating causes the air above it to expand and rise. This low pressure then attracts surface breezes over the adjacent water body. The onshore flow is relatively cool and moist, so it keeps the daytime temperature in the coastal zone low and provides moisture for afternoon showers. Sea breezes are occasional, but rarely affect more than 15 to 30 kilometers inland. The reverse flow at night is usually much weaker than the daytime wind. Because the land and air above it cool more quickly than the surrounding water body, the relative pressure over land is higher. Therefore, air flows offshore as a land breeze. Two. Anabatic wind. Upslope wind is formed when the air on the hillside is heated by higher levels of insolation conduction than the air at the same horizontal elevation but vertically above valley floor. This causes the upslope air to rise, which is then replaced by cooler air coming down from valley floor. Three. Valley and mountain breezes. Another important daily cycle is characteristic of many hill and mountain regions. During the daytime, the heat from the land surface causes the air around the mountain slopes to warm up more than the air around the valley floor. This heated air rises, forming a low-pressure region, and then the cooler air from the valley floor rises upslope, flowing from the high-pressure region to the lower-pressure region. This upslope airflow is known as a valley breeze. Valley breezes are especially common in the summer, when solar heating is at its strongest. The rising air also often causes clouds around the peaks, leading to afternoon showers in the high country. After dark, however, the pattern changes. The mountain slopes lose heat quickly due to radiation, which cools the adjacent air and causes it to slide downslope like a mountain breeze. Mountain breezes tend to be weakly developed in the summer and are likely to be more pronounced in the winter. In fact, a common winter phenomenon in even moderate mountain areas is cold air drainage. This is simply the sliding downslope of cold air at nighttime to collect in the lowest spots. Similar to simple air drainage, katabatic winds are the more general and powerful downslope flow of air. Katabatic winds are derived from the Greek word katabatic, which means descending. Katabatic winds come from cold upland areas and fall toward lower elevations under the action of gravity, sometimes called gravity flow winds. Their air is dense and cold, and while it warms up adiabatically as it falls, it is usually cooler than the air it displaces as it descends. 4. Katabatic wind. Katabatic winds are most common in Greenland and Antarctic, particularly where they whip off the edge of high, cold ice sheets. In some cases, katabatic winds become channeled through narrow valleys, where they can develop high speed and destructive power. Katabatic winds are found on many different terrains around the world and have many local names. One of the most famous is the Mistral, which sometimes surges down the Rhône Valley from the Alps into the Mediterranean Sea. In southern France, the Mistral of the Rhône Valley can cause frost damage to vineyards as cold north winds blow over the Rhône Valley, the Gulf of Lions, and the Mediterranean Sea. On the other hand, the often stronger Bora, driven by cold air from winter high-pressure systems inland, sweeps across the coast of the Adriatic to the west and south. In Alaska, these winds are known as taku. When cold air blows across the Columbia Plateau in North America, it can push west through the Columbia River Gorge as a powerful, windy, and sometimes violent wind. The Columbia Gorge wind, pronounced coho, often signals the start of a long cold spell. The sinking air warms up by compression, but it's so cold at first that it's much colder than the sea air it's replacing. That's why the Columbia River Gorge wind pushes west through the Cascade Mountains toward the ocean side. For example, in the northern Alps, mainly in Switzerland, the term downslope wind is used to describe a gust of wind blowing down the windward slope of a mountain. In contrast, the term Chinook refers to a wind blowing down the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains in the United States and Canada.
Brought to you by audio.ai.
5. Föhn, Chinook winds. The term downslope comes from the fact that a steep pressure gradient develops when there is high pressure on a mountain's windward side and a low pressure trough on the leeward side. As air moves down the pressure gradient, it moves from the windward side to the leeward side. The air on the downflowing side of the windward slope is dry and warm because it's lost its moisture due to the condensation of the snow or rain that fell on the peak. It's also warm because it contains latent heat from the condensation of the air that's left over after the snow or rain. As the air moves down the gradient, it warms up and reaches the base of. A snow eater along the Rocky Mountains front is known as a snow eater because not only does it melt snow quickly, but it also quickly dries up the resulting mud. Föhn, on the other hand, melts snow and creates avalanches. In Argentina, this type of wind is known as a zonda. When a zonda moves through an area, it causes a dramatic rise in temperature, sometimes over 20 degrees Celsius or more in an hour, and a sharp drop in relative humidity. Compressional heating is the primary source of warmth in such a wind, as potentially warmer and drier air is pulled down from above. 6. Santa Ana winds. A Santa Ana wind is a warm, dry wind blowing from the east or northeast into Southern California. It develops when an area of high pressure over the western United States persists for several days. The air comes down from the high desert plateau. The wind deviates clockwise out of the high, bringing dry, warm north or east wind winds to the coast, as opposed to the typical cool, moist wind from the west. The strong, dry wind blows out across the desert toward the Southern California coastal areas. As the air rises from higher to lower elevations, it moves with increasing speed through constricting valleys toward the southwest. The wind irritates the population with its dust, dryness, and heat. Santa Anas are known for their high speed, high temperature, and extreme drought. Their presence also creates favorable conditions for wildfires. They make headlines almost every year by fanning large brush fires that burn dozens of homes late summer and fall and sometimes in spring. 7. Desert winds. In some hot deserts, convection currents, caused by intense heat, produce convection winds that produce dust and sandstorms. In desert areas with more loose sand, sandstorms develop as high winds, enhanced by surface heating, quickly carry sand particles close to the surface. A spectacular example of a dust or sandstorm is a haboob, from the Arabic heb, blown. A haboob is most common in the African Sudan and in the desert southwest of the U.S., particularly in southern Arizona. Dust devils or whirlwinds are spinning vortices that are most common on hot days in dry areas. The Sahara dust devils, which affect parts of West Africa as well, are also caused by convection winds. Sirocco. Sirocco is a hot, dry, dusty wind that originates in the Sahara Desert. It can appear at any time of the year, but is most common in spring and usually only lasts for a few days. It blows from the south, out of the interior of the desert into the cooler Mediterranean Sea. It's often associated with depressions that come from the Atlantic coast eastwards inland. Once they cross the Mediterranean Sea, Sirocco cools slightly by absorbing the water vapor, but it's still hot and dry. Sirocco's scorching breath destroys vegetation and crops, especially when it comes at a time when vine and olive trees are in full bloom. The wind is so famous that it's called Chili in Tunisia, Ghibli in Libya, and Lavesh in Spain. Khamsin, Egypt, and Malta, Malta. Sharav, Israel. Garbi, hot wind, Adriatic and Aegean Sea. Fog, heavy dew and rain, blood rain. Red dust, Sahara Desert. These hot winds raise the air temperature to 50 degrees Celsius and bring the relative humidity down to less than 10%. Storm systems are rare over the Mediterranean in summer, so scorching breezes like these happen in spring or fall. The harmattan is a mild wind blowing from the northeast or east, originating over the cold Sahara in winter, and blowing over the western coast of Africa. It brings relief from the scorching heat along the coast, and is so dry its relative humidity rarely exceeds 30%. The doctor brings welcome respite from the humid air of the Guinea lands, as it increases the rate of evaporation, resulting in cooling effects. It is such a dry wind, however, that not only does it destroy the crops, but it also stirs up a thick dust haze. Samum is a powerful, dry, dusty desert wind that blows over the deserts of Africa and Arabia. The name Samum means poison wind, as it is often accompanied by temperatures above 52 degrees Celsius, which can lead to heat stroke. Eight. Some more local winds. A burin is a powerful, cold wind blowing over Russia and Central Asia. A purga is a strong, cold wind with blowing snow. A pampero is a cold wind blowing over Argentina, Uruguay, and the Amazon basin. A burga is a cold, northeast wind in Alaska, usually with snow, similar to the burin and purge of Russia. A southern burster is a cold wind in New South Wales in Australia. A brickfielder is a warm wind in Victoria in Australia. A levanter is a mild, humid, often rainy east or northeast wind that blows over southern Spain. A leste is a hot, dry, dusty, east or southeast wind from Saha.